Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Victory Green Hour as the Philadelphia Eagles win their fourth consecutive game, defeating the Detroit Lions 16-9 as they improve to 8-2 on the season and remain in first place in the NFC. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, what's going on, man?
I just want to point out that you were totally right in calling out my extremely high score that I predicted, because it definitely showed even your score was high. But I'm doing good, man. I mean, a win's a win, and we're gonna get into a whole lot of different discussion points. I'm certain.
Yep, another win and another week of useless and unnecessary distractions by the media, by whoever it is, bringing up stuff that just shouldn't be getting out. But we'll see if we touch on that. It's really annoying that it's given all this the media in Philly something to talk about, and something. It's like nobody hates the Eagles more than the Philly media. Nobody hates the Philly media more than the Eagle fans. So that's how I live life. Before we jump into that, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54, and follow the Eagles Pinpull Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, or wherever you get your podcasts at Eagles Pinpull Network. And if you're joining us live, let us know your thoughts on the game. Did it live up to expectations? It was like a year and a half, 2 years in the making. The Lions had this game circled on their calendar since, when did the schedule come out? April, May. And they did a lot of talking in the offseason. Amon-Ra St. Brown said they wanted the opener, and see what a healthy defense can do, and we'll show the Eagles what's up. A lot of people were saying the Eagles wouldn't have won the Super Bowl if the Lions would have beaten the Commanders, and yet they couldn't beat the Eagles anyway. They had they didn't have a fully healthy defense. They were missing some people in the secondary. The Eagles are not performing at top notch on the offensive side of the football right now, needless to say. But that defense, let's start on that defense, because if you look at the roster, you look at where most of the money is allocated, it's allocated to the offensive side of the football. $50 million quarterback, $20+ million receiver, running back, a $30 million receiver, a $25 million running back, the offensive line. The Eagles put most of their money and prioritize the offensive side of the football, and right now they can't score. The offense just looks discombobulated, and I'm for one think it's the coaching. I get Jalen isn't playing bad. He's not turning the ball over, which is key. The Eagles lead the NFL lead the NFL in turnovers in terms of not giving the ball away. I think they only have 3 turnovers, I think, for the year, 4 turnovers for the year. But then when you look at that defense, it's young. The defensive line: Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, draft picks. Jalen Phillips was just a trade. Zach Baldwin was a low-level signing last year. Then he got a big payday. Jahad Campbell / Nakobe Dean, draft picks. Next to him, Quinyon Mitchell, draft pick. Cooper DeJean, draft pick. Andrew Makuba, draft pick. Reed Blankenship, draft pick. Adoree Jackson was a free agent signing. Like, you look at the defensive side of the football, and this is after losing Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, CJ GJ. Like, it's not like this defense are all the same players from last year's championship defense and the number one defense in the NFL. No, like about 4 or 5 different starters, and yet this defense is outperforming the offense. And I'm going to give you one reason why, Connor. Vic Fangio. They have a seasoned defensive coordinator who plays no games. Look at the Eagles' offensive staff. Kevin Patullo, first-year offensive coordinator. Nick Sirianni. Nobody wants his hands in the offense, but it seems like it might be a little bit. That's the big difference. And a lot of people are saying, well, go out there and get an offensive coordinator like Vic Fangio. They're not like out there like leaves on trees. They're not just there for the taking. If they're there, if they're there, or if they were going to be there, they're picked up by another team. So it's tough to go out there and get an offensive coordinator that does not want to be a head coach. Maybe you can get a Frank Wright after the season, Maybe you can get a Doug Peterson. Who knows? But the Eagles on the defensive side of the football have the luxury of having Vic Fangio, who's been a coach before, head coach before, doesn't want to be a head coach again. This is his last stop, and the staff that he has put around him and has coaching these players, they are working out brilliantly right now. And that defense was flying around, and they held an offense of the offense of the Detroit Lions, who averages over 30 points a game, has Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams. Their offensive line is is the top 3, 4, 5 in the NFL. Held them to 9 points, and they were only given 9 points because Nick Sirianni decided to go for it on 4th and 1 from his own 30-yard line. That's neither here nor there. Another fourth down decision in the fourth quarter that we'll be discussing and see if his one job is the culture and the decision making. It hasn't been that great lately. But what are your thoughts? I know I just did a nice long preamble there, but the defense was outstanding, and they have been against the Packers, and the Lions have given up 16 points the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the defense was just on point. Like, I was on the edge of my seat for the majority of that game because I was like, this defense can't really continue to make stop after stop. The key big third down, fourth down stops over and over and over, especially against the Detroit Lions. I was sitting there and I was like, there's no way this keeps going. There's no way. And it just kept going and going and go. It got so bad that in moments where Dan Campbell probably should have went for it on fourth down, he stopped going for it on fourth down late in the game. The game was still, one score. Like, okay, well, my defense, I can trust my defenses as much as they can only because of our offense, essentially. But I mean, I just was shocked that it continued to happen in the fourth downs, and then the batted passes. Like, they knew coming in, like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter had made mention that they saw something on film after the game that they felt confident they could go and bat passes down, and they batted 5 passes down between the two of them. Jordan Davis doubled his season number in one night. Those plays were so impressive, and you can definitely tell if you can get the Detroit Lions out of Ford Field for a playoff game, and it's cold. It's got to be cold. If he goes to Tampa, he's probably going to be just fine. But if it's cold weather game, you can tell the cold weather games get to him. This isn't just a Detroit Lions thing. This dates back to his LA Rams times all the way back. He's always struggled in the cold weather, and a lot of players do. And I know that the argument's going to be, well, this is why the game should be played in a neutral field at all times. And then there's others like us who think that it should be left to the elements. They did it. They left it to the elements for 50 years before we started really implementing these dome or partial dome or retractable dome stadiums that have come into play in the last decade, 15 years, that those have actually come into play. So, I mean, I'm a big elements guy. I always will be. I understand why the Super Bowl cannot necessarily be played in the elements, should still be able to be, but I can see that argument. But to just have every stadium move to retractable roofs or domes, I completely disagree with, and I know you do as well. But back to the game at hand,
But before you jump back to the game, going with off this retractable. Look, I get it. The Eagles are going to get a new stadium in 10 years. And Jeffrey Lurie wants to host the Super Bowl, wants to host the Final Four, wants to host the college football playoff, wants to host a bunch of things that you can't really do in the wintertime. If they get a retractable roof, I think I've said this before, in writing, every Philadelphia Eagles home game, the roof has to be open regardless of weather. The reason you get home field advantage is to take advantage of the elements. We would not have had the Snow Bowl against Detroit 10-ish years ago. Wouldn't have had the snow game against the Rams in the playoffs last year. There's a reason why when you have home field advantage, if it's in a dome, what advantage is having a dome besides it being loud? The weather should be an advantage for you if you're facing a team that's primarily in a dome stadium or in a hot climate environment. So look, it's going to happen most likely. Unfortunately, I don't want a dome. I don't want the Eagles to get a dome, but it's going to happen. And I just want it put in writing that during Eagles games, when the Philadelphia Eagles are playing a home game, whether it's regular season or playoffs, that the roof is open at all times. Now, if say the Eagles are hosting the Super Bowl and they're in it, okay, it can be closed because it's the Super Bowl. But if they have home field advantage, if they're playing a home game during the regular season, during the playoffs, roof must be open. I apologize. You can continue.
No. I knew I would get you with that and get you on a little rant and tangent because we both agree. We're both the same way. I mean, Buffalo plays to the elements for a reason. The Steelers do. You look at some of the Green Bay, Lambeau Field. Like there's some legitimate.
The Bears and the Browns are soft because their new stadiums are going to be roofed or domed stadiums or roofed stadiums, whatever it is.
I think everyone should just do, like, if you really want to ensure you're able to do things, make it a retractable roof, and you can still have those things, but to the same point, you can also open it up to the elements that football truly was made for. Like these elements in football go hand in hand. So, I mean, otherwise, like the front group was amazing. Jalen Phillips again continues to stand out. Nakobe Dean, like I saw that Jihad Campbell played the least amount of snaps he's played all year. I mean, I thought there could be a split there, but Nakobe Dean has changed this defense and he is earning himself a massive payday. And based on the fact that Howie went out and got Jihad Campbell, is he gonna pay Nakobe Dean? I mean, listen, I think he should be paid. I think there's a risk to him. I absolutely agree. Is he going to get hurt again? Highly likely. But I mean, look what he's doing when healthy and in the lineup. He is instrumental. Him and Nakobe Dean are the best linebacker duo in the league when they're out there together, and what they do and how they play off of each other. They even spoke to it like last year in the early going when, the season started and Dean was flying around and Bond was looking like this all-pro who we got for like $2 million. Like they talked about it back then and how they play off each other and they're so important for each other. Bond was important for Dean's development. Dean was important for Bond coming into a new environment in Philadelphia. And then Vic Fangio was clearly maximized the two of them to a massive degree. So, I mean, Nakobe Dean, massive game. Jalix Hunt continuing to look a much better, more comfortable part. Like he was coming along, but you could still see like he needed somebody more experienced across from him or some sort of healthy rotation. And you can tell over the last couple of weeks with Jalen Phillips there, Jalix Hunt is looking like a potential stud in the making. And he's already been thrust into a starting role when he wasn't necessarily ready for that starting role. So now he's just getting even more experience padded on to everything. And then, of course, the secondary, I mean, it's Adoree Jackson, what did account for, 69 yards. But, I mean, Adoree Jackson did have some decent plays. Guarding, Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown is no easy task for any team CB2. So Adoree Jackson is probably earning his way into staying into that role for the rest of the season at this point. I don't see them, if they weren't going to turn away like in this past game with Ja'Cory Bennett back in the lineup and healthy, I don't know if there's a reason to move away, especially after you did what you did, stifling the Detroit Lions offense that, like you said, puts up 30 points a game. And then, of course, Cooper DeJean and Kenyon Mitchell, you can't say enough good things about. But one of the big things that you had mentioned heading into this game was, the fundamentals, making those big plays, making those big tackles. And while they did have 8 missed tackles, they made a lot of big plays. They made a lot of big stops. They made the hits where they had to make the hits. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is slippery when wet. We know that. And he was very slippery. It seemed to be the only person that Jared Goff could get the ball to that made anything happen after the catch. So it was an impressive game all around for the defense.
Very impressive game. And going back to your Nakobe Dean point, like they have to find a way to bring him back. He's the heart and soul of this defense. He's like a coach out there on the field. And as you mentioned, they got better when he got back, and they're just better against the run. He's so good at the blitz he had on his sack. He just ran right through David Montgomery, and David Montgomery is usually pretty good at picking up those blitzes, and he literally ran right through him, like pushed him, hit him back into Jared Goff, and Goff went down. So like I don't know how you do it. Maybe you change to a 4-3 defense to get them all three on the field. I don't know. Make Jihad Campbell an edge rusher, depending on what happens with the edge room. Who knows? But you have to find a way to bring Nakobe Dean back. Adoree Jackson, like We were talking a bunch of crap on him last week. Like, how's he gonna cover like this great, set of receivers that Detroit has? We know Dallas has a couple, good receivers who they'll see this week, but he did a really good job. Now he gave up the 40-yard touchdown. Who's running with Jameson Williams? Like, let's be real, he's really quick. But like, he didn't let that phase him. He was in coverage on a couple of fourth downs, which was helped by the Eagles front four or front seven, getting pressure, because on the 1 4th down in the red zone inside the 10-yard line, if Goff had a half a second more, he had a tight end wide open, but he had to rush the ball through it to try to get it to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Adoree Jackson was in coverage. So he did an outstanding job, when called upon. You mentioned Jahmyr Gibbs. He had 150 yards all purpose. He only had like 30 or 40 yards rushing. It was all in the receiving game, which, it's tough. But, Nakobe Dean ran stride for stride with him on a play, ran stride for stride with Jameson Williams on a play. Again, you cannot let Nakobe Dean leave the building. Like, I know he's in for a payday, and it may be a risk, but you have to find a way to bring him back. And when you have the Georgia quartet, or the Georgia trio, or it is the quartet, the Georgia quartet, in the center of the defense, Dean, Carter, Davis, and Smith, like, this is why everybody was clamoring for Howie to draft from the SEC, draft from Alabama, draft from Georgia, because these players with championship pedigrees, they're used to this, they're used to this type of play. They're used to playing in the moment. They're used to playing for championships, and they can get up for these big games. Another person who's been, and we mentioned his name a couple times, but he's looking like him, like last year. Jalen Carter is a beast. Like, he and you mentioned after the game they had a tell on Jared Goff. He called out a couple of running plays. Like, we've seen it 2 weeks in a row. Mauro Jomo last week on the 4th down against Green Bay. We've seen it multiple times this week where Jalen Carter or somebody's calling out a player saying, hey, it's going to be going here. They're using their IQ in the classroom. They're using it for whatever Vic Fangio is teaching them and showing them, and they're taking it onto the field. They're not just letting it go in one ear and out the other. And you have to love that by this defense. Like, a lot of these guys, again, the Georgia guys, learn from Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart's a really good defensive coordinator at the defensive mind at the University of Georgia. And whatever he taught them, give me all the Georgia players. Like give me all those Georgia defensive players. We almost had it. We have Keely Ringo, who can't get on the field right now. They did have, Lewis Seen when they picked him up, but he's gone. Like, you get these type of players that have played in championships, players that are just physical. Like, everybody talked about how Detroit is such a physical team. And the one thing that the Eagles wanted to go out there and prove, and the message from Nick Sirianni, all week, was be the more physical team. And defensively, the Eagles were the more physical team. Detroit was 0 for 5 on 4th down, 3 of 13 on 3rd down. Like, they did an outstanding job. And you knew, and you knew that Dan Campbell was going to go for it on 4th down. And the one thing the Eagles proved is, like, you're not going up against the Washington Commanders defense. We are better. We are more physical. We have more talent. And like, while, Dan Quinn is a good defensive coordinator, a good defensive mind for Washington, Vic Fangio is the godfather for a reason. And they just did an outstanding job on that defensive side of the ball. And I was surprised, like you said, every time, like, they kept getting stop after stop, and I'm like, they're going to eventually give up one. Like, it's going to happen. The Eagles offense better score because the defense is going to give one up. It happens. And they just kept getting stop after stop after stop. How many times did Detroit get into the red zone? 3-4 times. Came away with nothing but field goals. And they deserve a ton of credit. That defense was balling. That defense, man, the big question is, can the defense take this team to another Super Bowl? Can they continue to play like this from here on out, with obviously injuries withstanding? Like, how good can they be? Better than last year's defense numbers wise? Again, you're playing a much tougher schedule. It may not look like it numbers wise, but when you're watching them out on the football field, this defense is playing out of their mind and playing on par with last year's #1 overall defense.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean the task has been made a lot tougher by a significant injury on the offensive line that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But that just makes the job a lot harder when a underperforming offense is now losing very, very vital pieces. It makes the job for the defense become even more difficult because they're going to have to stand on their head even more and continue to make those big stops. And they showed they can step up, but no defense in an offensive friendly NFL is going to be able to step up week in and week out and make 10, 12 crucial stops every single week. Eventually, the bend don't break. It's a guarantee every defense bends and breaks at some point. Hopefully they can hold on enough in times and make those big stops like they did in this Detroit game to keep games close and at least give the offense a chance. I mean, the offense had a number of chances and should have put up a lot more points. This game probably shouldn't have been 16-9, but it could have been a swing for 14 points in either direction, honestly, if some of those fourth downs converted, or if this offense was able to convert really, I mean, arguably anything. But just like some points there, Jalen Carter had 5 tackles. All of them were considered to be stops, which means they were negative. They were plays that would have gone for 0 yards or negative yards. And he had the 2 batted passes. And then the Eagles, you kind of alluded to the pressure on Jared Goff. They had 19 pressures on 60 offensive snaps. So that's not just dropbacks. That's 60 defensive snaps altogether. So they had a pressure on almost every third dropback, or every third offensive play, which is pretty amazing because obviously when you bring the dropbacks into play, they probably had on dropbacks pressure on pretty much every second one. But you saw it, you could feel it, and I mean, we could keep praising this defense all night, but I think that it's best we hit on the elephant in the room.
Yeah, the offense is not good. And the big question is it coaching? Is it the quarterback? Is it the receivers? Is it the offensive line? Is it Saquon? I personally am going to start out with the coaching. Did you see the route that did somebody put out the routes that AJ ran? Did you see what it looked like? And then if you look at the routes that he ran, then if you look at the routes that he would run last year when Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator, looks nothing like that. He did not run across the field once. Like, you have third and fourth string cornerbacks covering him, Rock Yasin, and I forget the name of the other corner, but you have guys that aren't normally starters covering AJ, and you have him running like 3 different routes. There was no throws over the middle of the field, and like they were playing man a lot too. Like, find a way to get AJ Brown, even Devontae Smith into space. There were no rub routes. There were nothing, no mesh routes. It was so frustrating. And like a lot of people were talking about how it seemed like Jalen was force feeding AJ Brown. The first pass of the game went to Devontae Smith. He dropped it. The second pass of the game went to Dallas Goedert. He dropped it. Another pass went to Devontae Smith. He dropped it. And who never drops passes, by the way. Dallas Goedert dropped 2. Like, it gets to a point, like if I'm a quarterback, and you usually trust, Devontae a lot, and he didn't have any catches, which sucked, because we know but we're not going to hear from him because that's not who he is. I don't think Jalen was force feeding the ball to AJ. AJ was pretty much catching it for the most part. When it got to him, did he give up on the one deep shot? Maybe a little bit. He probably wasn't running it, through. I mean, Jahan Dotson had a great play. I think it was a third down play when the Eagles were down deep in their own territory inside the 5-yard line. Jalen had to scramble because Aiden Hutchinson would put a nice spin move on Fred Johnson, and he was able to throw it downfield for 25, 30 yards. So that was a great play by Jalen and Jahan Dotson, going with the scramble rules, getting upfield and giving a target for his quarterback to throw him the ball. But like, it does get to a point for a quarterback, if your receivers aren't catching the ball, you're not going to want to throw it to him often. And I get it. I said it before. Devontae is a very reliable receiver. And also, like, you have to take into effect, the wind was whipping in Philly on Sunday night. It was crazy how windy it was. And it obviously affected Jalen, who doesn't have the strongest arm, in terms of like throwing it through, like just in speed. He has a really nice deep ball, yes, but when it comes to the kind of throwing it hard, whatnot, that's not his game. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Brett Favre. He's not gonna throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball to you. He's going to get it to you. It's just not gonna be, a fastball. So if it's the same this week, you got it's gonna be, I don't know what the weather's going to be like in Dallas, probably 70s, whatever. It's not going to be windy. It's not going to be cold. It's not a great defense by that. Like, if it's the same, we really, really have to start discussing what's wrong. Like, we've all called for it, that Patullo should have been fired by now. It's not going to happen right now. Maybe it'll happen in the offseason. Who knows? But something does need to change. And you mentioned Lane Johnson being out. Like, he's going to be out for the next 4 to 6 weeks at the least. Hopefully not anything more. He has to wait for the swelling to go down to see if it's broken, to see if he needs surgery, because if he needs surgery, he's done. We might be without our center this week. Cam Jurgens went out and Brett Toth came in, and Brett Toth on the tush push on the fourth down got zero penetration, got zero movement. So, and you have to give credit to the Detroit defense. They took advantage of that. But Toth not being able to push, get any push, and that's why the Eagles didn't convert the fourth down. And the Eagles gifted Detroit 3 points. They got fortunate for that very weak and should not have been called pass interference. As an Eagles fan, I can admit that. That was not a pass interference. You should have let them play. It should have been Detroit's ball, and we would have been sweating. As an Eagles fan, though, I'm happy. Obviously, we got to kneel it out. But yeah,
I mean, you're not gonna give it back, especially when you look back earlier on that false tush push that was lined up in the neutral zone.
The rule. So if Fred Johnson should have never touched. If Fred Johnson didn't touch him and they snapped the ball, they throw a flag. If they line up in the neutral zone
Tyler
like that,
Steen. Steen was the one that was tapping on him.
It was Steen. If they line up in the neutral zone like that, you're not allowed to touch them because you have to give them the chance to get out. So if they would have snapped the ball with his hand there, I think the flag would have come out. But because they didn't give them the chance to, that's why the flag was thrown. Steen should have never done anything. But it was unfortunate because wasn't that another 4th and 1 that ended up going, that they were going for, that ended up going the 4th and 6 or something like that.
Yeah.
So they had to punt. But yeah, like, so technically the refs didn't get that wrong.
No,
but the pass
this is a poor decision by Steen on that.
Interference. The pass interference was a bad call. I can admit that.
And the pass interference, like, there's a lot of people out there who are saying it could have been a push off. I mean, you could argue that, and then there's some people who are pointing out, well, AJ Brown had to push off push a little bit, because if he didn't push off, he wasn't going to get away from the hand fighting / holding that was happening. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that is the picturesque play that you let them play it through. I don't care if you bring review into the mix next year. That play, to me, is one of those bang bang plays that you just let them play it.
They tried that review thing. It's not going to work. You can't.
It's not. No, I agree with you. And so, I mean, like, I'm always a very strong proponent of, if you have to look to the refs or a final decision that was made, you probably can look at a lot more things internally at your team. So as a Detroit fan, as a Philly fan, I do the same thing. In a game where we lose by 1 score and Twitter is blowing up because of a referee decision, does the NFL have a referee problem? Yes, I would tend to agree. But if I'm a team that loses by 7 or 7 or less, I prefer to look in at what could have been done better as a team, not at that ref play, because then you're just trying to take something that was out of your control and use it as a reason, like, oh, they ruined the game. This should have never happened. It shouldn't have been called, or should have been called, vice versa. And I'm a strong proponent of looking in. I mean, are there certain fourth downs where maybe, was Dan Campbell a little too aggressive? Was there ones where he stopped going for it that he probably should have been going for it? I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can look back at for the Eagles and the Lions, both respectively. But I mean, you hit on some good points. The drops are brutal. The Smith drop, the Goddard drop, and then there was a Kylan Granson drop, which, I mean, to be completely honest,
why he was getting the ball thrown to him, I don't understand.
And that far down the field, that was an AJ Brown or Devontae Smith ball, not a Kylan Granson ball. And like, to me, I'm so done with Calcaterra and Granson. Like, I'm ready to see Cam Latu.
Yep, I was gonna say that. Yep,
I don't see it. You kept him on the roster specifically for a fullback. He's becoming special teams ace for you, and you don't use him in any block incident. The one snap he played, everyone is currently playing it on repeat. He blocked Aiden Hutchinson on a key run play. Like, you cannot, if you take anything, Kevin Patullo, from that game, one of the biggest things you need to take away from it is Cam Latu can probably catch the ball with the same intent as a Kylan Granson, but he can block a million times better than Kylan Granson. So to have Granson on the football field, even Calcaterra at this point, there's enough weapons that he can spread it out without needing a second tight end on the field as a pass catcher in that scenario. He needs, and with Lane Johnson out, we're going to need some support next to Fred Johnson. I mean, I trust Fred Johnson. I think Fred Johnson's going to obviously do an admirable job. He did a fairly good job against the Detroit Lions, but he's going to need some help in some certain instances. And I think that Cameron Latu needs to get that opportunity. He was known to be a blocker, and he's going to be able to catch a ball if he needs to in a pinch.
And the one downside to Fred Johnson is he was the sixth offensive lineman when the Eagles went to their sixth offensive line look. So now it's going to have to be Pryor or maybe Willie Lampkin. If Lane has to go on the IR, you activate Lampkin and maybe see what he can do. Granted, he is like 5'10" or something, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
And then, yeah, when I also, well, let's get to Brett Eclipse here. Hey, y'all, it's been a while. Definitely welcome back. He says, so sick of this offense. But, man, this is the best Eagles defense I've ever seen.
Last year's defense was better. And I don't know how old you are, but go back to the 90s, even the early 2000s defenses. Man, they were legit. It's obviously the 92, I think it was 92 defense, which was number one in every defensive statistic. They didn't make the playoffs because Randall got hurt. But, like, that defense was literally number one in every defensive statistical category known. Like, that might be that they're up there for one of the greatest defenses of all time, with the 85 Bears, with the 2000 Ravens, and whatnot. Obviously last year's defense, the 2000 Eagles defense is with Hugh Douglas and Hollis Thomas and Jeremiah Trotter and Brian Dawkins, Troy Vincent, Bobby Taylor. Like, those defenses were really good. And I'm not saying this defense isn't good. This defense is really good. And we saw what they were able to do last year, obviously different parts, but I think last year's defense was better. This one is getting better, gradually getting better throughout the year. Obviously 4 or 5 different starters, and you have Makuba, who's young out there. Jahad Campbell was in there. Now they're getting healthier. They were injured on the front, in the defensive line. Now they trade for Jalen Phillips. They get Nolan Smith back. Jalix Hunt is had a great game against Detroit. He's turning it last year he turned it on in the second half of the year. He's doing the same now. So maybe by the end of this year, this defense will be better than last year's defense, but they are definitely playing way better than they were earlier in the season.
Especially if they're forced to carry this offense. If we continue to be able to talk about them in the way that we're talking about them after this Detroit game, we can definitely argue if they ultimately end up carrying this offense all the way to the Super Bowl and somehow making it one of those low-scoring Super Bowls where they make these a plethora of amazing stops like they did last night Sunday night against the Detroit Lions, then you could definitely argue that this may go down as the best Eagles defense only because they get you to the Super Bowl or they win you a Super Bowl. But I mean, you can definitely argue right now that there's
the defense did win the Super Bowl last year. Like we held the Chiefs to it was 40-6. It wasn't 40-22 or whatever the hell. Like
true.
The defense was so if Jalen doesn't hit the dagger to Devontae, Josh Sweat's the MVP of the Super Bowl, right?
Good chance.
Probably. Yeah. But obviously they wanted that to happen. They wanted to give Jalen the MVP. And I'm glad he got the MVP, obviously.
Definitely. He also says literally everything about this offense stinks. Route concept sucked. We've been saying that for weeks. Play design sucks. Been saying that for weeks. Player usage sucks. Absolutely. I mean, you've some of the best weapons. Like there are literally fan bases out there that are saying if our team like Howie Roseman builds the Eagles, or if Josh Allen had this offense, could you imagine? I mean, yeah, absolutely. I wish that your executive people were as good as Howie Roseman, but there's a reason Howie Roseman deserves to be executive of the year pretty much every season, every second season, because he's able to, turn over the fact that there's new offensive coordinators coming in, going through coaching changes, some of the tough free agent decisions he has to make. Obviously, there's some misses. You can look back at the misses. Every executive is going to have some misses. But Howie Roseman continues to find a way to keep this team a contender year over year. Like you wouldn't even think that we had gone through the Carson Wentz and the Doug Peterson transition and that bumpy couple years that was ended that, and then the move into the new regime with Nick Sirianni. You would never think that was that in that recent of memory. That was only like 5-6 years ago. Like that's how close that transition was to where we are now as an Eagles organization. So, I mean, the player usage, I think at this point, listen, I don't think the route concept or play design is changing with Kevin Patullo. I think that's one of the reasons Kevin Patullo kind of has to give up the play calling or has to go as a play caller. I just feel
Would you rather Nick Sirianni be the play caller?
See, we don't know what. Like there was a lot of assuming that Nick Sirianni was calling plays at some points, but we don't know what was his, what wasn't his in those times.
If you go back to his first year, or before Steichen took over, like now could he have improved between now and then? Sure, but like I mean, I just like Patullo is annoying. And going back to like the route concepts, I was at the Eagles Minnesota game, and me and Connor talked about this after that game. On the first touchdown pass to AJ on the 4th and whatever, his initial route sucked. It literally was just a lazy out, and then AJ and Jalen kind of had to freelance it, and Jalen told AJ to go deep, throw it to him, touchdown. Like he runs AJ, we'll stick with AJ Brown, runs the same routes over and over again. And I agree with everything AJ Brown has said about this offense. It is terrible. Like all he wants to do is help the offense improve. And again, a lot of people are saying, well, yes, that's fine, but he shouldn't have come out public about it. How do we know? And I've said this multiple times. How do we know he didn't go behind closed doors, talk to Nick, talk to KP or Kevin Patullo, talk to Jalen? They didn't have meetings and nobody listened. And I guess, look, the only way you can get somebody to listen, it needs to get out there in public. And again, still, nobody's listening, so it's really not working. But how do we know that he didn't first have a conversation in-house and it just went in one ear, out the other? Nobody's listening to him, or they're shoo-shooing him and saying, look, we'll figure it out, whatever, and nothing is changing. Then he comes out, does the Twitch thing, does the social media thing. Again, I have zero issue with what AJ said because he's not wrong.
And I mean, look, like, would you probably give up on some plays after a while when you're constantly just running a straight line for 20, 30 yards, game in, game out? Like, when you look at those 12 targets that he had yesterday or on Sunday night, I think 3 of them were in breaking routes and only like 2 of them were slants. And then there was another one where it was a dig further down the field where it was probably 15, 20 yards downfield and then he cut in. But I mean, like, I would get annoyed having to run the same routes 20 yards down the field just to realize, oh man, this ball ain't even coming to me, or the play's already done. Like, you're like, I know that it's his job, but that would have to be the most deflating thing to do over and over. It's like running a 40-yard dash over and over and over.
And I don't want to hear the excuse that, like, oh, he's being double teamed or they're playing over top of him. So you're telling me teams aren't doing that to Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua? Like, we can go on and on. CeeDee Lamb, like, we can go on and on and on. And guess what? The ball is still being thrown to them. They're being schemed open. Why can't the Eagles coaching staff scheme any of our receivers open? Kevin Petula was the passing game coordinator, and Eagles were 29th in passing last year. I think they're 28th in passing this year. Nothing has changed. And then, as Bredicliffe says, the front office is literally never letting Sirianni pick his own OC again. I mean, Brian Johnson 2 years ago, failure. Then then Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie brought in Kellen Moore, and then he went and took the Saints job. I wish he didn't. He should have just stayed here. But he wanted to be head coach. Can't blame him. He's going to get fired in a couple of years anyway. Maybe he will end up back here. Who knows? But like, anytime we make an in-house hire, it does seem like it doesn't work all that well. So, and again, I get it. Kellen Moore took the job after the Super Bowl. The Eagles won the Super Bowl. They were literally the last offensive coordinator position open. You get to pick up the worst people that are left, I guess. I mean, if I was the Eagles, now again, it's tough. Like, I would have went after kind of a young hot shot in college, but he's also wants to eventually become a head coach, so it might only be a couple of year thing. But like, get somebody who's called plays before. Kevin Petula has never called plays, and you can tell he's never called plays by what he calls on a weekly.
And it was the same
basis.
It was the same with Brian Johnson, and you could tell he never called plays before that year that he was the offensive coordinator. So I agree. It's like these guys take nothing from the offensive coordinator before that seems to find better success with an offense. It just feels like these coordinators take nothing, or they want to try and create their own and be their own and say, I'm going to go and get myself a head coaching job. Well, Brian Johnson and Kevin Petula are going to be quite a ways away from ever having head coaching jobs, if not never having head coaching jobs. They could end up like, I wouldn't even say a Brian Schottenheimer, because a Brian Schottenheimer should never have been a head coach, but he was a pretty solid offensive coordinator. So, I mean, they have to probably, like, I feel like, it's just frustrating because then you have the Derek Gunn report that came out too about people being frustrated with Jalen Hurts. And it just feels like, Kellen Moore, like, look at every essentially second offensive coordinator. They've been able to work to Jalen Hurts' strengths. You don't bring quarterbacks in and expect them to work into your offense. You create an offense that maximizes their strengths. And to sit there and do Kevin Petula's offense plays to almost no strengths of Jalen Hurts. We saw that huge quarterback draw on third down. We never see the quarterback draw anymore. That was so crucial last year to get in so many first downs. And we saw it once against in the Detroit game. We've seen it a handful of times throughout the season, but that was such a vital part of the offense last season. Granted, the Russian attack was obviously a lot better, and teams were more fearful of Saquon Barkley and what might happen, so they kind of had to account for both Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. But, I mean, I agree. Derek Gunn, if it's Derek Gunn or it's Diana Rossini reporting, I am giving 100% credibility to Derek Gunn over Diana Rossini. Because he's definitely dialed in. He's definitely a guy who's got some really good inside people, and I get it. He's very stoic. Like Jalen, I don't know if it's so much Jalen Hurts as Jalen Hurts the quarterback like that you scheme around. I think it's Jalen Hurts the stoic behavior. It's Jalen Hurts the attitude that he has. It's Jalen Hurts the almost lack of leadership that seems to to percolate out from him. Like there is no real leadership that you can see. Maybe behind closed doors, and we've said this before. Behind closed doors, he may be a very incredible leader. We've seen him give some very good, pregame speeches and prayers and things before they go out on the field and play a game. But you really don't see a whole lot of leadership like you see out of some of the other quarterbacks. So I don't know if it's so much has to do.
He's more of a quiet leader, like.
Mm-hmm.
He's respected, obviously. I mean, I think what people are, and I don't want to use the word annoyed, but like he's very conservative, does not want to turn the football over. It's like it's been drilled in his head: if you don't turn the football over, we win. So he's not going to put the ball in harm's way. And while I appreciate that and I understand that, would it be nice for him to just let it rip every once in a while? Sure. And again, maybe the weather conditions the last 2 weeks played into him not doing that. Cold in Green Bay, windy and cold in Philly on Sunday night. Again, that in Dallas could present a better weather conditions. And again, Dallas's defense, now their front four looked really good against the Raiders, but the Raiders are really bad. Like that offensive line is so bad.
Ashton Jeanty had 7 yards.
Yeah,
like
6
your first round
for
pick.
7 yards or something like that. Like and Geno Smith is really bad too. But Dallas's secondary is not good still. And so maybe if the offensive line can hold up against Quinnen Williams and Clark and that front four, Fowler and the front four, maybe that will present some opportunities for AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. Also, I want to see some more Tank Bigsby. Like he had 6 carries for 34 yards or something like that. He had all his carries were 5 yards or more. He shows a lot of burst, getting the ball through the hole. He hits the hole and goes. And I think getting him more carries will help Saquon. Saquon had 83 yards, and I think that's his second most this year, which is crazy. Like the Giants, he was his season high, and I think 83 against Detroit was the second most he had. But we talked about how he had over close to 500 carries last year, including the playoffs and the Super Bowl run. Maybe like give him a little bit more of a breather. I'd much rather see him get the ball than Will Shipley get the ball. So you talk about the personnel decisions. Get Tank Bigsby involved more. In the running game, he shows burst when he carries the football. Any passes that's going to go to Calcaterra or Granson should go into Goddard or Devontae, even Jahan Dotson. More like he catches the ball when it gets thrown to him. So I like to see more of him. Like we're getting into the part of the season where you're going to be facing worse, not as good defenses as you have been playing. Dallas isn't that great. I don't think Chicago's defense is that great. The Chargers defense is so-so. The Raiders defense stinks. The Bills, the Washington defense is old. I don't think, think they can be had. And the Bills defense is like you should be able to move the ball on them. It's stopping Josh Allen that's gonna. Are you going to be able to keep up with them? But we also thought the same thing with Detroit. Are you going to be able to keep up with Detroit? And you held them to 9 points. So if the Eagles are able to do that, if the Eagles are able to find a way to just do something different offensively, and you've gone up, they went up against Dallas already in Eberflus, but they have new pieces. Quinnen Williams is new there. Overshown is back. He played yesterday for the first time. They have Jadeveon Clowney. Deron Bland is starting, but they don't have Diggs. Hooker is back. So they're getting healthier, but I still think you can take advantage on the outside. That secondary is not good. Their front four is better. They should be, but you still can run on them too. So this is where the Eagles are going to have to find a way to take advantage of your skill position superiority and open it up. Like, stop being so conservative. Stop calling screen plays. The screen doesn't work for us. The screen that they threw to AJ Brown was useless. That was dumb. So I don't know what they go over. Like usually the quarterback and the offensive coordinator, quarterback and the play caller discuss, all right, I like these plays. Why don't they do that? It's just so frustrating. And hopefully the Eagles figure that out. Because there's way too much talent. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. All the money is on the offensive side of the football. And I get it. You're not going to have Lane Johnson. You're probably not going to have Cam Jurgens this week. So, you're playing with a makeshift. I mean, Fred Johnson. I have more faith in Fred Johnson than I do Matt Pryor. Just go back to the Kellen Moore playbook. Like, just I don't want to see the same old that we've seen over the last 10 games of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think at this point, like Kevin Patullo and Jalen Hurts, I feel like there's a major disconnect there. Like they pan over to the sidelines, and I don't think I ever see Patullo and Jalen Hurts together looking at the iPad and figuring out, okay, what worked, what didn't work. Obviously, they'd find a lot of what isn't working, but it just doesn't feel like in game they try to do anything to change it up or to adapt to the situation that's been put in front of them. They come in, Kevin Patullo comes in with his game plan and he sticks to it like it's the Bible, and he just does not want to move away from it. And obviously at this point we're 11 weeks into the season, 10 games into the season, and it's quite clear that his playbook is not working. It's quite clear his play calling is not working. It's quite clear that there needs to be some major changes. And I feel like at this point, even Jalen Hurts needs to, I don't know, like you said, AJ Brown feels like he probably potentially was vocal inside. It didn't work, so he went outside. Maybe Jalen Hurts is trying to be vocal inside, but he's not the type that's going to go outside and start, calling Patullo out in front of the media. I mean, arguably, they've already called him out without calling him out by name and stuff. So you can kind of feel it in the frustration throughout all of the offense. But you need to play to your quarterback's strengths, and you have to figure that out again and find out, look back at some of the game film. Don't worry about the game film from this year because you're not going to learn anything new from it. Look back at last year, look back at that film and find out what was working and make it work. And that all comes back to this point by Brett Eclipse. It just amazes me how Patullo has been with Sirianni the entire tenure, which included four offensive coordinators, and retained/learned nothing from everything that's worked over the last 4 damn years. I mean, forget the Brian Johnson year. But like I said, every second offensive coordinator, you can look back at those seasons and pretty much find things that worked for this offense and things that worked for Jalen Hurts. You didn't see these reports like Derek Gunn's report coming out last year when things were working and Kellen Moore had kind of built the offense around the run-in strength of Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts and worked around the strengths of Jalen Hurts. It's not about forcing your offense onto someone. It's about building around the strengths of your quarterback. He's there for a reason. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl. He's a Super Bowl MVP. So there's no way you're telling me it's all Jalen Hurts' fault and that's why it's not working.
I'm going to say this. I think the only way this changes is if something like 2023 happens where they lost 6 of their last 7. Now, I don't think it's going to happen. This team is way better. The defense is way better than 2023. So that's not going to happen. But because they're 24-3 in their last 27 games, and that's Jalen not turning the football over. It's protect the football. We're going to win games. We win the turnover battle. We win games. And that's what has happened. And that's what is probably going to continue to happen. It's crazy that we're talking about this offense. You would think that we were 2-8 and not 8-2, the way that everybody's talking about this offense right now. But we're 8-2, first place in the NFC, and it doesn't feel that way. So, do you think that it's Jalen being conservative, or do you think it's Nick saying, Jalen, don't turn the ball over? Is it more on the coaching staff, or is it more on Jalen?
I feel like there's probably a mix because I remember
No mix. Pick one. No mix. That's easy. That's the easy way out.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that it's probably the coaching staff, and only for the fact that, what was it, last year? Or was it the year prior, where he started the season and he turned the ball over? It wasn't last year; it was the year prior, and he turned the ball over like, he had like 2 turnovers per game,
That
essentially.
was last
Up,
year because
yeah,
we
that
were
was last
two
year.
and
So it
two.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what? So he had pretty much 2 turnovers per game. We got through, I think, week 5, and week 6 was our bye or whatever. And we were talking about Nick Sirianni being, it's Nick Sirianni. Is this a fireable start to the season? And he had like 8 turnovers, 10 turnovers across those weeks, and suddenly he stopped turning the ball over. He didn't become as ultra conservative with Kellen Moore at the helm as with Kevin Patullo, but maybe that's because of the play caller in his ear. That, like, he's not comfortable. But I mean, look at the routes. We already talked about the route concepts. He's clearly not comfortable with what he's seeing with what the guys are running, or the routes that they're running out there on the field. So I think easy way is, I think, the coaching staff, and I take it back to last year in the bye week.
Well, Kellen Moore did kind of change his philosophy though, because the reason why Dallas fired him, Mike McCarthy fired him, is because he threw the ball too much. He wanted to be a running team, and that's what Kellen Moore likes to do. He did that when he went to LA too, and he was there for the year. He likes to throw the football. He actually did change his philosophy after the bye week, because they did throw the ball a lot, and the offensive line, everybody knows offensive line went to Sirianni at the bye week. Hey, let's run the ball. We got Saquon, blah blah blah, and then that's what they did. They were really really successful at it. Obviously, Saquon going over 2,000. So I don't know, like you Kellen Moore tried to bring his offensive philosophy here, but when he realized that it wasn't as successful as he had hoped, then they went to kind of what Sirianni likes to do: run the ball, protect the ball, and whatnot. And it worked because they had an all-time great running game. They don't have that this year, and I think that's a big difference too. You don't have the running game. You don't have the offensive line is hurt. You don't have the health that you had last year, and that doesn't help, the passing game, because last year the running game helped the passing game, and that's what they thought they could do coming into this year, and they can't. And then now the offense, or the passing game, excuse me, isn't getting going. So they need to find a way. It's not just one or the other. It's both that aren't working: the passing game and the running game.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, there's definitely things like, maybe, Patullo, we know Patullo's play calling isn't good, but we also know that the offensive line hasn't been that good. We know Jalen Hurts at times has been, gun shy and stuff. Like, there's a lot of things that have happened this year that probably don't necessarily land on Kevin Patullo, but Kevin Patullo is doing this offense no justice and trying to get it out of this weird hump that they're in, that they can't seem to get over. Like, they're just trying to climb this mountain by doing the same thing over and over, and it's just not working. So, I mean, it's hard. Like, I feel like you made me pick one, so I picked the coaches, but I feel like it kind of goes on both sides, but it goes back to where it started, and where I feel this ultra conservativeness in Jalen Hurts started was last year at the bye. And I mean, we say that you're never going to win. You're probably not going to win a Super Bowl strictly running the football. Obviously, the Eagles kind of proved that semi-wrong last year. And I feel like it's still something that, like, you still, when you put Saquon Barkley there and Jalen Hurts, who's more of a rushing quarterback, he's more of a scrambling quarterback, you have to expect that your offense has to be built in a way that plays to those strengths, even though the weapons that you have out there would be amazing pass catchers anywheres and amazing pass catchers in this situation. They're just not seeing the ball as much. AJ Brown's not seeing the ball at a 150 target, 100 reception clip like maybe he was used to. But I feel like this offense needs to get back to, like, at the end of the day, to me, it comes back to, you have to play to the strength of your quarterback. And we saw against Detroit, obviously the weather played a major factor, but this is why you don't want to watch Jalen Hurts throw the football nearly 30 times. He threw it 28 times, and he only completed
28.
He only completed 14 passes, and sure, the weather was an issue, but we've seen him throw the ball a lot more this year at times than we're comfortable seeing. And even in the better weather games, he hasn't been able to make the connections that maybe he used to be able to make. And I think that's probably who Jalen Hurts is. You're not going to turn Jalen Hurts into a hot Josh Allen. You're not going to get, Josh Allen came into the NFL and people said, oh, he has accuracy and completion issues, and now he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in football. I don't think that's going to happen with Jalen Hurts. And I think that your offense has to be predicated on the fact that that's just not going to work.
Well, Jalen Hurts has something that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson don't have, and that's a Super
This is
Bowl.
true. Listen. And it was built around the offense working, not at the start of the season, but as soon as they came out of the bye week, it was built around strictly, making those big plays happen, throwing the ball down when you needed to, making those short, quick passes, letting your weapons do all the work, the yak. And right now, all the yak you see is negative yak, because whenever they want to give it to someone for yards after the catch, it's a stupid screenplay. So
yeah, so frustrating, but they're 8-2. And we get to go into one of our favorite weeks. It's not only Dallas week, but it's Kelly Green Dallas week, as the Eagles will be wearing their Kelly Green uniforms in Dallas for a road game for the first time since they've brought back the Kelly Green uniforms. We will be back later this week to get you set for the Eagles, the Cowboys. The Eagles could potentially wrap up the division by Black Friday. If the Eagles beat the Cowboys this week, if the Cowboys lose to the Chiefs on Thanksgiving, and the Eagles beat the Bears on Black Friday, we have our first back-to-back division winners in 20 years since the Philadelphia Eagles won it in 2004. And
boy, being able to pull some of these guys, like especially the offensive linemen, for even a half of football will benefit them greatly.
Yeah, they do need to start blowing teams out so they can do that, because they're still in a fight for the number one seed. Nobody wants to come to Philly in January, so they're in a battle. They have the head-to-head with, and the crazy thing is they have the head-to-head with pretty much with the Rams, with the Bucks, with the Lions, with the Packers. They don't face San Francisco and they don't face Seattle, so it's tough to get the head-to-head with them. Common opponents, I guess it would be, and the Eagles beat the Rams beat the Seahawks, so and I think they split with the Niners if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so the Eagles have the toughest schedule in football coming into this year, and they have beaten all. It's not like they've had this cupcake schedule. They've beaten really good teams, and they still have the Bears, who are first place in the NFC North in 10 days. Then they have the Bills, who are in second place in the AFC East, but that's on the road. That's still a tough game. So the Eagles do have a couple of tough games left, but they also have, I will say, the Raiders cupcake. That's going to be a cupcake game. Dallas, I mean, it's a division game, so it's going to be a tough one. And Dallas obviously fighting for their playoff lives. They're 4-5-1. Again, the Eagles could potentially clinch the NFC East in the next 10 days. So we'll be back later this week to get you set for the Eagles, the Cowboys, Kelly Green week in Texas. Cannot wait for it. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHerrell54. And follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter or on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you get your podcasts. I messed that up, but whatever. At Eagles Pinpool Network. For Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you all for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.